Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I am here today with Scott Perez. And Scott, I didn't get your bio this morning. Sorry, there was too much going on. So crazy.
Sure, no
So I'm
problem.
going to ask you to introduce yourself. I know you have a very illustrious bio. I tried to open it just now, but there's too many things on my desktop. So if you don't mind, please do give yourself some background, and then we'll launch into actually any topics you'd like to discuss.
Okay, sure. Um, my name is Dr. John S. Perez. I was born in Tampa, Florida. I'm in Tampa, Florida now. And just to give you a little background of where I come from and my history, my dad was in the 3rd Missile Battalion with General MacArthur. Just to paint a picture before NASA. So I have ties to some of these things that are I have ties to a bunch of people that you've interviewed and people that you know um, or know about. So I
Okay,
chose
but
to go to
so why don't you tell us about you?
yes. So that's the reason I chose to go to school is because I didn't want to work on the docks all my life, and I saw kind of what my dad went through. My uncle did have a PhD, worked for Honeywell after that. So I went to Mercer University on a baseball scholarship. I played Division I SEC baseball and the WAC conference, and I was drafted by the Pirates, but I went to Mercer. I had a scholarship there. I had walk-ons to the University of Florida and Alabama, and I played baseball, but I was pre-med. So it was a big challenge for me because you're traveling around in a bus, you're playing baseball. It's hard to do your labs. It's like you're Mercer's in Macon, Georgia. You're there 3 days a week, and so you're missing labs. It gets very hard. So by the second year, I decide that I'm not going to play baseball anymore, and due to a lot of illness in my family, which is the reason I was pre-med, I changed my major to chemistry from biology pre-med to chemistry. And when I did, my advisor became a guy named Dr. Robert Hargrove. Dr. Robert Hargrove is now a retired Captain Level 6 full bird, and he is my mentor, Ollie North level, toxicology, and all of these things. I didn't know some of the things that were going on when I was at Mercer. I was just a student there, and there was also Dr. Crawford. He was a colonel in the U.S. Army, and so I'm mentored by these people
Okay.
in the curriculum there, but I have access to things like radioactive materials from Oak Ridge, Savannah River plant, those kind of things. So I was mentored in that program. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I'm an expert in all of the areas and disciplines, all of the physics, all of the quantum mechanics, all of it. The physical chemistry teacher, this is just a book right here. This person, Carl Garland, is one of the most famous MIT physical chemistry professors of all time. His daughter, Leslie Garland, taught me. And believe me, she taught me. It was a very difficult program. It was a very challenging program. It was the kind of program where it was a private school where I saw the sun rise a lot. And I saw people fail out of school. It was very challenging. And when you're done with this program, you don't graduate just because you finish the coursework and go do all the tests. After that, Hargrove made it where you had to take a GRE exam and perform in the top 20th percentile for the GRE exam in chemistry or you don't graduate. It doesn't even matter if you have straight A's. And so I think I was fortunate. I finished that early. But for me, it was not easy. So I worked very hard there. But Hargrove, who's been a mentor and a friend forever, propelled me. He propelled me into graduate school. Um, I had a bunch
Okay.
of options, okay, of where I could go to graduate school. I was accepted in a number of schools. I chose to go to the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and that was in 1991. I chose to go there. I had a teacher assistant scholarship for the first year, so I had to teach. I had to teach some cool people like Trev Alberts, who was a student of mine, in biochemistry. And mainly labs is what you teach there. And then after your first year, you start taking these board exams. And then you pick, in that program, you pick what field you want to go into. So you have a little bit of textbook work, and then you go straight into a laboratory, which is, it's like a job. You show up every day and you work there. And so you are taught. It's just like being a freshman all over again. You know, it's there's no free ride. So you go into a lab. I chose my professor, and the reason that I chose my professor was because of all the illness in my family, and also being trained in different areas, biological and whatnot, at University of Nebraska. So he brought in these South Koreans. Um, this was what I wanted to do. I was determined to do it, very determined. But I'm from Florida, so they made fun of me a lot. People from Wisconsin and Minnesota, because they come in my apartment, it was 80 degrees. There was a blizzard outside, and they were wearing all these. I'm like, I'm used to Florida. I wore long johns 24/7 the first winter until my blood thickened up, and then I could, wear a t-shirt and a jacket and jeans. But it was very cold for me until I adapted. All right. So my professor, Dr. Carolyn Mary Price, whom I don't have much I don't have very nice things to say about her. She did a postdoc in Tom Check's lab at UC Boulder. He's a 1989 Nobel laureate in RNA self-splicing. And I had the good fortune of working with Carol Greider, 2009 Nobel laureate, Elizabeth Blackburn, 2009 Nobel laureate, and several other Nobel laureates that I met in different areas and different disciplines. I very much like the program there, but I didn't get along with my professor. So there was a lot of turbulence in that entire program. And it's unfortunate.
Okay. Now, I mean, it sounds like you have a very illustrious academic career. Can we cut to the chase a bit, just so we can kind of talk about what you're going to talk about? So can you encapsulate the rest of your academic career
Yes.
Okay.
So the important thing there to realize is that I cloned 3 genes. I invented 3 PCRs. I was at the beginning of computer technology is integral to the sciences and the evolution of the sciences. So I was in the beginning of the internet. I was in the beginning of advanced recombinant DNA programming and coding, and DNA is a language. So I learned all of those skills outside of the textbook. So you go through all these programs and their boundaries in the indoctrination. That's the first problem. You're in boundaries and you're in textbooks. Then when you go into a lab and you do the work, it's a whole different ballgame. There's failure. So in the first week you're there, they're teaching you, hey, you're going to fail. So that first year was miserable failure for me. But those are the skills. I built core facilities. I had access to things like Silicon Graphics Iris Tower, $250,000 with 3D not 8 knobs, 3D glasses. You know, in the beginning, GenBank version 1, Oligo 1. My PI had she ran the Oligo lab. I built a core facility there for computing. So I leveraged computing. I started, by the way, I didn't mention, I started with video games at age 10. And hardcore, like, you know, the Atari 800, Apple IIe, all of those things. So I started programming back there. By the
Okay.
time I got there, I was already coding. And I use that. So I helped build NIH facilities to publish papers in all these journals like Nature's and Science, and do all these elaborate things in crystallography. I on my PhD committee was a crystallographer. There was a $4 million 4-circle diffractometer up on the next floor, and he had all the Silicon Graphics computers, the the DEC alphas, all of that. We had a fiber ring there. We were one of the 4 Archie servers in the world. This is all at the beginning of the World Wide Web and all of that. A side job that I had was with a company called DEC Futures that was part of JC Bradford, and they had an extreme amount of computers. I was just their advisor. That was they had a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, San Francisco Exchange. So I had exposure to that as a side job. It was kind of, starving student eating out of a can type of thing, but that was my side job. So I had a heavy exposure to computing and to recombinant DNA programming of beings. Okay. Beings in the form of a most of my work was done in E. coli. Form was done in ciliates in the beginning, and we are talking programming of beings. So that is that environment. When I came out of there were no jobs when I came out. So where did I go? I went right back to the port. Well, I went really to Sarasota and did water analysis for 6 months, and then I went back to the port and worked for Amalie Motor Oil and worked in labs. And I was like, I'm not making any money here. I'd already was dating my wife, and I'm like, I need to kind of evolve. I spent all this time going to school, and I'm working for peanuts, driving back and forth to Sarasota 120 miles a day, working in a wet lab doing metal analysis on drinking water was, it was destroying my car, and I wasn't making any money. Then I moved in the port. I wasn't making any money. So I started looking for ads, and I went to this, I read in the newspaper and the classifieds there was a job. So I went over here to the Hyatt, and I met a guy, and I'm going to be very careful with some of the names as we go through this, because I don't need to get sued for slander or in any trouble. I don't need any visits from anybody, but I'm prepared for them. So I meet this guy named Jack K, and he's in a room, and I go into the room, and he interviews me, and I talk to him about, hey, look, I've done all this computer work. I wrote all this software for Amalie and did all these things. This is my background. And he offers me a job on the spot, making a lot more money. Little did I know I was being hired into a dark program by CIA to build the encryption for the United States military.
Okay.
So in the room next door to me, I did not know that John Deutsch and some other folks are watching me while they're asking questions. So the phone rings, and He picks the phone up and he's talking to people in the room next door. I learned this later. Okay. I did not know that was going on. They asked me what I knew about wares and hacking. And I proceeded to tell them how to hack software from Silicon Valley, specifically Sierra Online. Okay. And then the phone rang again. Apparently, the people I heard in the room next door nearly fell out of their chair. Okay, so I went into that company. The name of the company was called Digital Secured Networks. It was a group of people from Brookhaven National Laboratory and the accelerator there,
Okay.
as well as several people from different military disciplines, one of which went to Area 51, clean up radioactivity. That was in the field doing many things. And people from Digital Equipment Corporation. And
Okay.
so,
And let me just, I don't want to sidetrack you. I want you to stay where you are, but
sure.
don't lose your place. But I just want to ask you, because I know about Brookhaven and I know the linear accelerator there. And I have reports that I think are very reliable about them opening portals using that accelerator. Are you aware of that?
We're going to get to that conversation. They weren't the reason. Okay, so I think that conversation will be down the road. They weren't working on portals. I'll tell you, they were physicists. Dr. Aaron Friedman, Dr. Eva Bozoki.
Okay, so you weren't affiliated with the opening of portals there.
No, I wasn't. They weren't. I'm going to tell you what was happening.
Okay.
The accelerator at the time was a target of hackers, and they had a problem. And so the people from Digital Equipment Corporation, along with these people and people tied to the Church of Scientology, okay,
Yeah.
you know, L. Ron Hubbard and the money raising people, and IBM and a number of these groups, they were being targeted. So they wanted to secure that and encrypt it. That's how the company became. They weren't. Now in my case, I told you I work with a crystallographer. The thing with Brookhaven, okay, you get the best crystallography off the rings of the accelerators because you get brimstone X-ray, and it's a beautiful source to characterize proteins or nanomachines. At that time, those people left Brookhaven and joined the Church of Scientology, which is how things are very bizarre. There are ties all between it. But remember, this is a program that is running under the director of CIA, John Deutsch, and my boss is reporting to him. So I did not know these things. I'm a 20-year-old and in my 20s at this time. I didn't fully understand the things that were going on there. And to be honest with you, I was not the problem with indoctrination is you're so focused, you've got blinders on. Okay. The blinders come off later. And that's when I come to understand these things. And in the conversation, we'll get to it.
Okay.
So, yes, those things are viable. And I do want to discuss them with you. I have a digital whiteboard and some things I want to discuss and show you relative to the exact question. But anyway, we built the encryption for the United States military. Okay. FIPS 140-1, the common criteria. And we were the first to pass encrypted video through NATO while the NSA was watching. I've had people in the field at the CIA and DEA and FBI install encryption there. as well as we were the first ones to encrypt wireless communications at Norfolk. And so other things went on with Army. That company was purchased by General Dynamics in 2014. Is
Okay.
now all of that encryption is in theater. It is hardened key encryption, and I will never sell my country out. I'm 100% a patriot, so
Sure.
I would never do that. But things got very bizarre for me in that company with the people involved, and that includes trips over here to Clearwater, where Tom Cruise now lives, in the Church of Scientology. And I was working all over Silicon Valley. So I understand that you were born at Moffett Field. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one of these trips, I was at Cisco, and we we're
Right.
discussing integrating encryption into Cisco. And there was a NASA consultant there in the meeting that we were meeting with. And he was giving me a hard time about my suit. Obviously, the guy I was with had an Armani suit. I was a young kid. I didn't have, $1,000 suits. So we had a little back and forth with this gentleman, and I was calm. Okay. And then after that, they said, well, we're going to go to Moffett Field now. And so we had to be cleared to go to Moffett Field. This is in 1996. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is before Google and all of that. We had to be cleared to go there. So I went to Moffett Field. I spent a lot of time all over Silicon Valley. I know California very well, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I'm a huge Dodger fan.
Okay.
So we go to Moffett Field. Okay. And I was cleared. And so a CIA file was created on me. Obviously, there were background checks done. I was told that some background checks had to be done before I could go on there. And John Deutsch created my file on the CIA. So that's it. I went on Moffett Field with the other people. And the reason we went there was because, and we met with NASA people there, was because at that time, there was limited, as I was told, there were limited computer systems in the satellites and the vehicles in space that had been tested in space. At that time, it was like a 286 Intel box, but there were, and I learned, and all of this is probably declassified by now, they had the largest Commodore 64 network in the world there. All these satellites were Commodore 64s, and they were being hacked. Never told me who they were being hacked by. Just that they wanted to encrypt that comms with the same level encryption that we were putting in the military.
Okay.
So,
But okay, now again, because we don't have hours and hours. I want to try to get you to
but
move along.
I heard things about I've heard a lot of things about
Yeah.
didn't get to see any craft, didn't get to see any other stuff.
All right.
Okay,
Did
that
you ever
comes.
go?
So
Did you go in
anyway,
the hangar and saw the different weather in
the
there?
hangar was closed.
Oh.
The hangar was closed. So anyway, I did work for them. I worked for CIA. Things got strange. I left there. Okay, but I left that position and was hired by NSA, a former NSA employee, and a contractor group that was bringing NSA and military in Intermedia. And so I came in Intermedia. I was hired by CEO and Chairman Dave Ruberg, and he hired me specifically to build a surveillance product called ViewSpan, which I built. And I owned the surveillance system in NYC on 9/11 for the entire state of New York, for Georgia, Florida, and we had the fourth largest frame relay network in the world. The day of 9/11 was bizarre. It started out with a phone call from Wall Street. At 2:30, I was shown 14 spreadsheets of what Bernie Evers was going to do to my 4,000 friends in terms of firing them and racial profiling them. At 4:30, the FBI called over to Dave Ruberg, and I got a phone call asking me to provide impact for that. I had customers in the towers. We were the data provider for the entire state of New York, right?
Okay, so do you know, being in that position, did you know about the holograms?
I did not. And I looked at the whole entire thing in the beginning of that. I did not know about the holograms. I now know about them. And uh that impacted us. We had people working 24/7. That I had to write code that had to run 4 days in order to give the impact statement to the FBI for what occurred, because we're talking about equipment, Sun equipment. I'm a Unix bigot. Sun equipment that is, $250,000 for the server and another $250,000 for the fiber channel arrays. And I had $20 million worth of equipment, okay, in Albany, New York, watching everything. And this is way before Ed Snowden. way, 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 way before we even get there. Okay. But with my background, okay, I was looking at the scenario, and I knew that there was a lot of information in Building 7 regarding WorldCom. I also knew that Bernie Evers bought Intermediate Communications because he wanted to position himself in the Brooklyn court. When I tell you, I own first responders, police, FBI, military, anything data in, say, New York, we had it. Last mile was Verizon. So they knew that they were being sued in bankruptcy court in Mississippi. They bought us. We were basically chapter 7 from the .com fallout. They started paying the bills. So I learned that the reason they wanted to be favorable there was they thought they could get a positive judgment and bank, and with a whole thing. And then it didn't work out. We went into bankruptcy court. They wanted to survive all of that, right? Scott Sullivan's lying to us on meetings. The entire thing is going on there. And we're all watching. I'm watching and getting the same kind of feeds everybody else is getting. I'm looking at the situation. And of course, I did not at first know all those details, but I have learned them since that time. And, well, to jump out of that just for a moment, we went through the bankruptcy. It was hell. Okay. It was a lot of tension on people, tires being slashed, people getting another and doing things to other people. I believe I was poisoned somewhat, but around 2003 for people that had to pay their phone bills and things like that. I didn't tell you my mom's background. My mother's first cousin was a godfather in Sicily. Her last name is Giuliano. Okay.
Yeah.
So Salvatore Giuliano, yeah, Lucky Luciano was a godfather in New York. Understand that the boroughs of New York at that time were controlled, right? I went to bat for those people. They were part of our workforce. They were a sales force. I created things for them, okay? And we had going back to 1999, we had a strategic agreement with Ivan Seidenberg of Bell Atlantic that was technology that was built to Bell Labs, okay? And very few people even understand these technologies in terms of surveillance and what they were and what we built for them. I was hired to basically hack Hewlett Packard systems and Naviscore systems and build the technology for Dave Ruberg. So anyway, we go to Verizon, right? We go into Verizon. I go in Verizon, and things sunset because now they bought us, and those systems that Bell Atlantic Verizon bought and had Lucent and Bell Labs integrate to us, they don't need anymore because now they own the networks. We're talking about 24 global data networks. They're huge. Okay. People like Amazon and Google and stuff like that, they're our customers. Wall Street's a customer. Wall Street was a customer before. Global networks, undersea fiber, global, Moscow. So, there was a period of time where, for lack of a better term, I was a catfish in the company.
What does
And
that
that
mean?
means you sit at the bottom and you feed.
Uh,
As projects drop down, you just take what you can get, because if not, the environment is turbulent and you can get riffed or laid off or, whatever. They throw you under the bus.
okay.
So here comes Ed Snowden. I wasn't doing very well. This is like 2010, 2011. And I was just like, man, I'm doing this crap I did 20 years ago, and I'm going nowhere. And my career's not evolving. I've done everything you've told me. I'm like, can't you give me something? Can you let me do these other things I want to do? So my boss, Don, and I'm not going to say his last name, he was in Richardson, Dallas. Okay. He's reporting to New Jersey. He tells me he wants me to go to Denver, Highlands Ranch. You know where that is? Highlands Ranch is near Aurora. It's like 2
Okay.
miles south Denver. Okay. Into what is a Kmart across from a Walmart. It's a Verizon business facility.
All right.
Okay. And the reason I go to this project specifically is because we're doing $38 billion in SS7 voice traffic. And all of that traffic has to move to voice over IP. And so that salespeople can sell customers new features, multimedia services like we're using right now. They didn't exist before. It was all just plain old telephone system. And they had a problem with the VoIP business on a global Cisco network is stuck at $400 million. Well, the call centers couldn't do any work. And I owned a lot of stock, and I had been there, And so I learned that Apple is beating our asses because we're billing them 80 million a month. They're beating our asses. So the call center, no one can sell any more product, nothing. Okay. So see that patent on the wall there? I wrote the source code and fixed the program using video game code from the 1980s, from all the Atari stuff and all that, and blockchain to track phone calls. Because at the time, Cisco could do 3, and I wrote blockchain with unlimited. Okay. I solved a ledger problem using C binary coding. I wrote it. Okay. And we were fighting because the people in Colorado, they had issues, real ones, mental, in my opinion. And I had gone down to Colorado Springs by the Air Force Academy by way on that trip, which is a 3-pronged PEREZ systems, E-system building from EDS, and there's an alphabet group and one wing in that building, and the other 2 wings were Verizon Business. So I wrote it. That patent is the fastest patent in the history of Bell Atlantic Verizon. Okay. Then we're fighting. 6 months later, in the 2013, Ed Snowden runs his mouth about the NSA, breaches his contract. Okay. Now, he does not know the truth of why that was written. Okay. He does not know the truth. He doesn't have any idea why this patent was created, whatnot. So did Oliver Stone. So all this, I came out and discussed all this on Jeff Rentz I've been on Jeff Rent's like 9 times. Anyway, that is the real truth. The other things that Ed talks about, okay, now I have a lot of knowledge, okay, a lot of knowledge about the entire thing, about how the government does what they do and why they do it. All right. Yes, there are programs that gather every bit of information, domestic and foreign. So after that, I was working with NATO, doing surveillance, chasing, yes, I'm wearing my white hat, Chinese, Syrians, Iranians, and Russians. Okay. All the surveillance. So once I did that work, I kept my mouth shut. I kept my mouth shut. I left that group. I went to the top security group of Verizon interface to government. Okay. I'm not going to say their name to protect those people.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate this background.
Understood. But understand that I caught the CIA and the government robbing banks. Okay. And when I did, they, so the things that are happening now, all right, I'm not shocked about. Why was I pounding into people talking to Trump before Admiral Rogers went over there? He didn't have much of a choice because information was coming to him from elsewhere. Okay.
Elsewhere where?
Me, I was providing that information. I have channels to people. I have had channels to people all around Trump. I've had channels to people all around almost any president in the Oval Office. Okay.
Okay, let's start at the, like, let's jump to now, because
Yes. Okay.
you tell me certain things and we've
Yes.
got somewhat of a background on you, right? And
Yes.
you and I discuss, the reality of AI. We talk about
Yes.
genetic. You said that the human genetics can be written on a computer, that we're basically, which kind of leads to the idea, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're kind of, our DNA is kind of AI. Is that what your premise is?
Yes, I have some things to share with you that are easy to talk about. And I think once you see this, once you see what I'm going to show you, okay, because you've got a lot of people making comments about AI and intelligence and these things, and some of them, quite frankly, are rude people that I've met that are ignorant.
Yeah.
So,
But I
I want.
also want, I mean, I want to know, first of all, why are you coming forward? What is your objective?
Well, my objective is that we are at a point of calamity and destruction and chaos relative to future. I'm a father, I have a daughter, future generations, as well as what we're all going through and experiencing now, relative to not just how we live in our economy, but question marks about what else is there. And the general public does not comprehend. I mean, why was the general public, uptight about computing technology and FCC laws? Ed Snowden never saw any of this stuff. He doesn't even know. He's got no clue. And the stuff that he did see was a feed that was so far downstream. His perception was limited. So the same thing is going on in these other areas, but also I, as a businessman who left that area, leverage the technology. Okay. I leverage all of it in order to survive in the system. Okay. The system that we're in multiple systems right now, multiple. Okay. We have multiple things going on. And I think if I share my screen in a whiteboard, I've got some images to show you. And when you see it, you're going to see that it's artificial. You're going to see it's be easy for you okay, with all of the people that you've interviewed and your contacts and different people. So when I came out of that mess, okay, when I came out of it, when all those things happened, I had been heads down so many years, Kerry, that I never came up and looked at the big picture. That's when Jeff Rentz and Frank Chili, okay, whom they knew Bill Tompkins, right? They know Jack Sarfati. I've seen all of his math. They hold on, let me close this right now. Sorry about that. I should turn that off. I apologize.
Interesting timing. Okay, go
Shut
ahead.
down signal. Don't worry about that. That's nothing.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize about that. They asked me to talk about all of this stuff related to UFO craft, technology of it. They asked me to talk about Victor Schauberger. They asked me to talk about Drake equation and all these things.
Mhm.
And one of the companies I own, I have a patent on a hydrogen chemical equation that has ties to all of these things. So I did what they asked me to do. And Frank, in particular, Frank Chili, passed me a lot of information, and I met some other people in these areas. Okay.
Okay, so do you know Sarfati?
I've had interaction with Sarfati. He is flamboyant, to say the least. I know he lives over in San
Yeah,
Francisco.
I met him in person. I've talked to him.
I have not met him in person, okay, but I
Okay, and what
again
about Hal Pudoff?
I never met Hal. Now I will tell you, okay, we didn't go through some of these things. So in 2003 to 2006, when I'm in all that mess, I get sick and I'm bleeding from my GI tract, and I take methylprednisone. Okay. This is when the voices started. All right. I talked to David Ayer about this. I had the voices. Okay. I had the telepathic voices. I not only had the telepathic voices, but I was being remote viewed and communicated with. I have caught people remote viewing me.
Mhm.
Okay. So, um, that, that in the beginning, that scared me. Okay. Very much so. I was like, what? I was questioning my own sanity. All right. But I think I'm better with it now. In fact, I think I'm harder to remote view now. I'm not the EBN that throws up the screensaver of nature, but I think I'm harder to remote view now. I was being remote viewed. So that was 2003 to 2006. Okay. Then I was being remote viewed again after the Snowden stuff. I mean, you talk about cyber attacks. I've had every kind of cyber attack thrown at me that possible. I was scared that they were going to, I told you the FBI didn't know my identity. The IRS didn't know my identity. Okay. I was scared that, but I decided that as an American citizen and all I contribute to the government and everything I did, I never sold anybody out. Never, ever. Never sell them. I will never do that. I'm 100% patriot. Okay. I decided I had the right to protect myself under the Second Amendment, and I wasn't going to put up with any of it. Okay. Zero, zilch, nothing. Okay. But I did have a small child. So, I wanted to be careful. I didn't want anything to happen to my family. All right. So, I was very careful about saying anything for a long time. I was trying to figure things out, actually. I didn't understand what had gone on with the government. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I didn't understand why I was being blackmailed by the NSA. And I did not understand all these things, but I was trying to be calm and keep my composure. So when I left there, Okay. I walked into a number of startups, and some are the ones that I own, and some are involved cardiologists that have world-class AI technology that diagnoses you and your cardiovascular system. And they have an AI model built by aeronautic space engineer with an MD degree and another cardiologist. It's all AI. It's all high-end math. Okay. It's all related. All of this is related. So I don't want to go in a rabbit hole, but I was in, okay, so the remote viewing business, I've had downloads. Okay. I know you get downloads. I never was a person who was studying the metaphysical studies of the third eye, the kushi. I knew about it. I I had my own way of reflecting inward in my looking in at myself and evaluating myself. I had my own ways of meditation. I had never done any training. I never went and hung out with Tibetan monks or any of that. um I
Okay, but why? Okay, so that's all good, and thank you for that. But when you talk about Jack Sarfati and Frank Chili, and what is Frank's role? I want to know. But aside from that, they asked you to come forward and talk about certain things. When did they ask you, and why did they ask you?
I reached out to Frank Chili. Okay. I start looking at these things. I reach out to Frank Chili and I'm like, there's some things here I see, right? And Frank, and he starts asking me all kind of questions about craft and asking me to talk to all these physicists and starts asking me these questions. Well, Frank was friends with William Tompkins. Okay.
Right?
End of story.
What's his role? What's his title?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I see Frank over here with all these MUFON and all these people. I don't, by the way, I agree with Sarfati stuff.
Cool.
Okay.
I
So,
like Jack. I think he's definitely onto some stuff, but
right.
but
When I show you what I'm going to show you in a few minutes, and you'll be
mm,
like, wow, I never saw it before. So I'm listening to Rents. I
hey, do you know
interact with
who
Chili,
Bobby Ray Inman is?
Bobby Ray Inman, relative to. I've got so many names in my head. They
Well,
just
Bobby Inman, I guess he's an admiral, I think, and he might be, I don't know what gone above that, but he's older. He's like top of the rungs in terms of running the secret military and
right,
what we call a secret space program.
right. Yes, I'm aware of that. So I don't know that off the top
Okay.
of my head. That name doesn't ring a bell, but I'm aware of the SSP stuff and all those things. So,
Okay. So,
um,
but you don't know where Frank Chili, what he relates to. You don't know where he comes from.
well, what happened was Frank was talking about. I don't know. You remember William Tompkins had a big poster. All of this stuff was on it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So Frank sent me a copy of it, and it had a lot to do with the planning of the craft and all these other things. But then they had physics questions, right? And so um, they wanted me to talk about Victor Schauberger's work and the Nazis' work. Okay, by the way, that person in the CIA that reported John Deutsch, his father was one of the founders of OSS.
Okay.
Surprise, yeah.
But you
So he
also
wanted,
have you also have family links, right?
right,
If I
right.
remember
So
correctly,
they
going
wanted
back
me,
to the Germans.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And so he wanted, by the way, in 2006, when I was eating the methylprednisone and all that, I saw a triangle 300 feet off the deck. I'm 4 miles from CENTCOM. I saw the triangle. I'm in my jacuzzi. I see the triangle. So I do what they asked me. I go in and I look at Frank Drake's stuff. I look at the equation. And remember, so one of the companies I own is called 4 Electrons.
Okay,
Gesundheit.
thanks.
One of the companies called for electrons, and I'm working on an equation involving hydrogen, involving Stan Myers and everything else that I bring with me out of Verizon. My business partner is electrical engineer from Alabama, a JD degree from Mercer. I come with this equation after MH370 falls out of the sky. Okay, so I told you I have downloads that come into me, and they come in different ways. They come as sometimes they come as a block of information, sometimes they come as an image,
Mhm.
and that started in Verizon before I left, and then I ended up getting a patent. Don't laugh. I own the patent in the United States for cannabinoid toxicity using a
Oh,
neurological
right. You
set.
ran that down for me.
I own that. So that was what I started. Then I walked out of Verizon, so I start the Canditech company, and I walk into Emergency MCG and Premier Heart with Dr. Shin and those people when I walk out, right? I'm doing that. And then I get the patent. So then John is like, you've got something here. I had the equation, right? So we filed the provisional and I met with Spa War. And it's all over energy. So at the heart of most of the problems that we're experiencing right now is energy. And the root of everything is energy. When I show it to you, you'll see. Uh, but energy is the foundation of entire countries and civilizations. It's without it, you can't
Right.
do anything.
Okay, but this actually gets into portal tech.
Yes,
And
it does. We're gonna go right there.
yes,
So I'm doing that. So
but
when I
you
start,
still didn't answer my question. So I just, if you don't mind,
I'm sorry. What?
Frank Chili and Sarfati and a couple other
Right.
people asked you to come forward and talk about certain things. When did they ask that and why? Or do
Okay.
you know?
So that all started in 2016,
Okay.
and it went on for some time. Right. I was on Jeff like 9 times. Right.
Okay.
So
So
all
that's where
those
you
things are in
went.
the
The first
archives.
place you went was Chef Rents.
Yeah. First thing I did on Rents was, I went through the 2 hours about Snowden and all that and the truth. Okay. Then I went and did Victor Schauberger. Then I went and did the Elements, which started with Mendeleev and Walter Russell, and also touched on Bob Lazar, Element 115. God bless you. You got allergies?
No, I'm probably being attacked, but it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Um,
So
so
go
I
ahead.
did that stuff. Then they're like, you need to look at the Frank Drake equation. We want you to talk about the Frank Drake equation, all these other things. So they're remember, I told you I was so heads down, I wasn't even looking at this stuff. And then they're asking me, Chili's asking me about people interfacing with craft. Why don't the craft have rivets on them? Okay. And that's when I realized that these craft are living, right? And then Chili kept asking me about why is it they keep saying, why is it the craft are being flown and managed at speed of thought, right? And all of these things. And so a lot of problem solving, mental meditation and thought and downloads relative to all this have occurred over all this period of time. But I never was in all that stuff until they went that way, right? So both Jeff and Frank. So Frank he was the one that was going all around, Mount Shasta, all the other things, telling me about these things. And I'm listening to, all of this stuff and digging into it, but also meditating upon it and focusing on what is there. Because for me, there's a relationship. I'm going to show you
Sorry.
when I show you the relationships with the atoms, okay, and anti-gravity, and where it shows itself in nature and how it can be manipulated and made, it's an intelligence thing. It's an artificial intelligence thing. It's proof of creation as much as anything else. And when you see it, I think it'll be somewhat shocking to you. But we now have 3 hydrogen patents. There is an equation. Anti-gravity is related to it. I don't personally know completely why MH370. I don't know. MH370 falls out of the sky. All of a sudden, it's in the ocean and no one can find it. And all of a sudden, all these things go through my head.
Okay, but
I
it's
mean,
not in the ocean. You know, must know by now. It's not in
right,
the ocean. That was
right.
fake.
I have no idea where it is. Okay,
Right, I understand. But what
but
you knew about the super chip guys, right? Freescale and the super techies, right? That were on the flight.
yes. Remember, I have a lot of patents. That's not the
Right.
only patent I have. I have a bunch of them. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this. I don't know why. All of a sudden, I start getting downloads. All this stuff goes through my head, and I was in Verizon at the time. Going back 2006 period, back when oil was $140 a barrel, 2008, I was working energy projects. All right. So I was already into it, but it took me 8 years to study what the Star Wars team did and understand it. Okay. So there are gaps, and you asked me discussion. Back in 2006, I'm working energy problems. We have serious energy problems with the networks, Internet of Things, communication, all those things. And I know there are rabbit holes that we can go down later another day, but I'm working on figuring out what the heck Stan Myers and the Reagan Star Wars team did. Okay. In the
Okay.
beginning of this, I did not understand. Even Aisha Dean is part of all of this. So here in this book, you see the formula right there, equals MC squared. All right. There's also a passage tied to the Bible right there, Job 38. I like to call it Job 38, even though many people, the religious, call it Job. All right. It's Job. It's a book about jobs, and it's a book about, what a job is. An ancient being that was talked to in a whirlwind out of what I believe is a UFO. So can I share my screen and put it to the side, and let's talk about the energy parts that I know you want to get to, because I know you don't want to hear my background of all the calamity and other junk. And nobody wants to hear it. I get yelled at by my wife all the time about that.
No,
So
I mean, I would like to hear all that, but I think my audience right now is kind of on their edge of their seats. So
understood.
I want to
We all
jump
are.
to a couple things. And yes, you can share your screen and show us what you've got.
Okay, let me see if I can do this properly. Share screen.
Okay, but again, you didn't answer really my question as to why you kind of jumped to 370, but you didn't explain why. Maybe you don't know why the timing, why Sarfati and Chile wanted you to come forward and start talking about this stuff, and specifically on rents. Do you have any idea what
I
their
don't know
objective
why.
is? Okay, fair enough.
I don't know why. I was drawn to them and they were drawn to me. It was a mutual thing.
Okay.
Um, that's a very good question. I have no idea why.
Do you think,
So
let me just ask you just vaguely, do you think that it's to recruit? Maybe they're looking to recruit some help out there, from young people that might be stimulated by this kind of a discussion and so on.
that's a good question.
All right.
Can you see that screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So in the formula equals MC squared, which is a famous formula, that formula is the Einstein equation, right, for relativity. And so on the left side of the equation is E, right? E is all energy. every bit of it, every single dimension of existence, everything. There is no matter on the left side at all. That that was on the book from Myers, right? And so Myers, when I saw the Reagan Star Wars team stuff, I was trying to figure out what in the world the relationships were and how that related to a whole giant rabbit hole we can go into about all the other things that come into play, everything from the genetics to the other things that came in under the emergency window with technology that's advanced that we probably don't even know all about every detail,
Okay,
right?
but yeah, but
I
this is
hacked it.
okay. Are you familiar with Homo Borg Genesis? And it's a legal term, what
Yeah.
they named humans that have been genetically reprogrammed in essence uh, through the RNA in a courtroom. Those people are now linked to what they call, the Borg and this idea of the Borg. Now, whether the lawyers who came up with this terminology know anything about the Borg is questionable, but this idea, and I have several whistleblowers, top whistleblowers, who talk about an AI that runs the planet. And
Yes.
Dr. Mount is Army intelligence, and he just referred to it recently in
Yeah.
a public.
Yeah. So remember I told you I filed that patent in Verizon? I didn't file it. Verizon was prosecuting it. So what that patent involves is we talked about quantum and other things. The beings that create the operating system can read the DNA wirelessly as your identity. Okay. So in that patent, it shows the electrical properties of the DNA in chromosomal form as a derivative of the sequence and its electrical properties. You got magnesium backbone semiconductor. I can read that. I can read your identity. The holy grail of identity. Remember, I was in identity. I'm dealing with the military, authentication, access control, identity, encryption, non-repudiation, right?
Okay.
These beings can authenticate you
Yeah,
off your DNA codes,
but it's not just that. It's
but so
frequency.
can the craft.
It's called frequency. Yeah. So you haven't
Yeah.
really referred to frequency.
Right. All of those are in play. All of them. Every bit of it.
Yeah.
All of the frequencies, all of the entanglement, consciousness, that is all a communication. All you're talking about spectrums of communication across dimensions, but the source code in you is your identity of your face, all of it. My identity. This is why remember back in this all came to be in 2014, in November 2014. Before that, they said, "Oh, your DNA's peer reviewed, not deep state journals, peer reviewed, right?" So your identity's junk. Oh, it's junk DNA. No, it is not junk DNA. It is you. It is you. So when I filed that patent, okay, it was controversial, and the reason I was after it was because I was involved in identity technologies from everything from, you know, I hacked Secure ID inside of Verizon. I hacked Marcus Raynham, who worked with my colleagues from Digital Equipment Corp. I hacked it. Okay. RSA now owns that. I hacked it. I also hacked Verizon Identity Services. And that's why I have the token patent. But the point is that when you see the electrical properties of these things, chromosomes, when you see the electrical properties, you realize is engineered and designed, and the beings that are not human, they're not human. They're either engineers or they're at a higher level than human. They're not the actual engineer that designed it, but they're higher in knowledge.
So they're artificial in many cases.
Yes, then you can see it.
Finding out.
Once you see it, then you're not ignorant anymore. You're not like, oh, there's only a computer and a kernel and demons. By the way, they call them demons. Once you see that piece, okay, once you see the systems, and so when like David there, so I watched him on, Michael Saw and the others. He said, oh, I can name 5 times where NASA shut us down. They put boundaries on them. all these systems have boundaries. And so, you know, or people call you conspiracy theorists or whatever. They, you know, they go crazy saying
Sure.
that, but they their mind, okay, the normal average person brings closure to perception, or they will get a headache, and the headache will persist. And that is, there's an art book, Perceptions. Okay, the mind runs and wants to go to the fastest thing it can and stop and call it the day and go on to the next thing. Otherwise, you get a headache. And this is where the reason we're here now, I believe, is because our original charter and the original things that we were originally put here by the creator of us and the whole thing was one charter, and it's being tampered with. It's been tampered with. But in order to see, I see the tampering. I see things.
Okay,
I
but let me throw something out at you,
Sure.
again, from this, from the Bible where they say, so 107's fond of saying this,
I
that,
watch them many times. Yeah.
Adam was given, God gave Adam, domain or control or whatever you want to call it. There's a word for it, over all the, the plants, animals, and stuff of the kingdom, right? But the reality is that if you think about it differently, in essence, that we do have the ability to actually change ourselves, to externally, change our DNA, change everything. So that's what was really meant by that. It wasn't
Yeah.
meant, it wasn't necessarily meant, it's not a control thing. It's more a creativity thing. So these are the things you have at your disposal to then basically
Yeah.
become like the creator, which is the engineer or the creator or the person who designed. And my understanding is that actually it was a group, not just one individual.
Which makes more sense. But I tell you, you create AI, so there's a lot more to the AI story, a lot more about the cyber war, about the
Well,
evolving
and
cyber
we
war.
need to talk about that. So let's have you back and talk
Okay.
about where
No
does
problem.
this kind
But
of
to give
thinking
you,
lead?
I create you. You're an AI system. I want to give you free will. Adam, I want to give you free will. If I truly am an engineer and I've created AI with free will, okay, then I tell you, okay, here's the tree of life and here's the tree of don't eat this, and the yin and the yang and the balance of sin and evil, all those things.
Yeah, but
I
see, you
tell
know
you,
what? The reality is that you can't give someone free will. They have to take it. They have to create it. So
you
what
machine learn.
you give them the ability to have free will out of choice. That's free will.
Yes.
So it's a
Yes.
circular, it's kind of circular reasoning, but
Yeah, that's
nonetheless,
exactly what it is.
it's like you
So
can't give someone freedom. They have to actually take it.
right. And so when you reference the Bible, you know, up into Genesis 6, the beings were one way, but once you got into Genesis 6, you had intervention on the entire thing and everything comes into play. But it's been going on. How long has it been going on? I don't know. I look at what Aisha Dean says and I listen.
Therefore, life to an AI and maybe to us has to be constant expansion.
Yes. And the thing with David Aaron, the silicon and all of that, I mean, again, these rabbit holes, we had these conversations in Verizon about all of what is happening. It's actually playing out kind of like a movie, Kurzweil and all of that. And the other, so we just talked about hydrogen oxide systems. No, there are places in the universe, there are these other systems. They're there already. So it's just to open your mind and see the other things and to realize that we got a long way to go, you know, where we are now in the behaviors and the social behaviors are just they're not they're not productive to humanity. They're
Right.
destructive. We're not evolving. And I told you I have a daughter, she's young. She just graduated from FSU last year. For me, it's I want more for that generation. And I want more for hopefully one day she has a grandchild. I want more for those generations. That's why I've done the hydrogen stuff. This here, I had no plans on doing. The story behind all of this is creator driven and lots of downloads, but that that was taught to me by my parents. My dad only had a 10th. I told you who my dad was. He had a 10th grade GED, went in the military. My mother had 12th grade education, but they tried to make it better for me, and what we're doing right now is we're
Are growing and expanding and so on. And I think it's also a fight, in a sense, over how you grow and expand in the direction you go, because totalitarian governments want to grow. They want to build, according to like Captain Mark Richards, passive super soldiers. In other words, super soldiers that will take orders, but they will have like augmented abilities and so on and so forth. So I'm in a certain sense, it's kind of like an oxymoron if you think about it, because the minute you get an augmented or an enhanced ability, what comes with it are things that you didn't plan on. Even the engineers maybe didn't plan on, right?
yeah,
And that
yep,
might prohibit limitation or control. So that's kind of interesting, being built into a system. It may be that systems, at the root of systems themselves, that there is no limitation, that's actually built into the system. You have to build in the limitation,
yep.
but it's going to break
Boundaries,
down. Duncan O'Finian, the super soldier, he
right?
said by the age of 50, all his memories started coming back that they'd wiped. Okay.
Yeah,
Built into the system, and the systems of the systems is
mhm,
unlimited, no
exactly.
limitation,
You can
unlimited freedom.
overcome. So,
Yeah.
as crazy as things sound, Kerry, the part we didn't talk about is this here. I never planned it to do things that did. It is super soldier technology. I'm 55. When I was okay, there's free weights right here. Okay, but I jet ski a lot, and I do the crazy things males do, lift weights for Olympic bench press and free weights right here. I used to get sore. Okay, I used to get tired. I had metabolic syndrome from diabetes. The textbooks and all the things they said, no, I don't have that anymore. Come to find out that when you shift that RNA algorithm into super soldier, you're in super soldier mode now. And who invented that and why does it exist? It's a long story, but that is exactly what this is. Because now, how is it you you just pass some text to me 3, 4 in the morning Eastern time? I'm awake. Guess what? I I can go 15 hours from here to Pentagon City and I'm not even tired. How can that be? How can it be? Who created it? It wasn't me. I didn't create the technology at all. I enabled it. What I did was I enabled it. Yeah, there's a patent and prosecution, but it's part of the respect, I would say, or hacking of the AI system. That's my being. It just so happens to be that now,
Right.
when I did this on myself was one thing. I gave the product away to a huge number of people, and now they're experiencing it, and they're like, "Whoa, this is crazy! This is crazy." Well, um. Anyway, it. I'm 55. I'm still learning. I'll always be learning. But I think the thing is with these discussions and these technologies, I don't think people should go off on a tangent and say, I live in this square box right here and draw on a whiteboard and then insult other people because we learn from each other, and we grow and evolve from it. But you know, we have to learn from each other, otherwise we won't be able to do for the children and the generations to come. We The whole thing with
Well,
energy.
in a sense, you're hacking the system. We
Yeah,
have to hack the system. We all
yeah,
become hackers.
yes,
And
we
that's,
are. We
yeah,
are all hackers, and that's the funny thing about it. I mean, I was laughing. So I'm a scientist, and all of these, Nobel laureates and all these, and I'm like, you know what? We are all just hackers of the creator. We're actually hackers. So I mean, for scientists to say, "Oh, I'm just a hacker," or "You're just a hack," some people get offended by that and just they lose it. They go off on a tangent. But the real truth is that is exactly what we are. That is exactly what we are. Even Nobel laureates are hackers, and some of the crap they produced has actually now been proven wrong. So it's kind of sad, but you know,
but
check
that's
and
what experimentation and exploring is
yeah,
all about, right?
yeah, it is. It is. That's exactly what it
So,
is.
again, I'm sorry, we have to close this
Well,
down
it
because
was
we've
a
been going
pleasure to
so
meet
long.
you finally, face
Yeah,
to face,
nice to
and
meet you
talk
as
with
well.
you. And I know you know lots of this stuff, but I think I tried to present
No, it's great. You did a great job, and I really
a
appreciate it.
different
And I'm sure it's gonna,
perspective.
stimulate a lot of thought and questions and
Okay.
conversation.
Well, have a wonderful evening. Don't get uh soaked in the rainstorm,
Okay,
with
it's all
Pineapple
good.
Express, all that dumping on you. Have a wonderful evening.
All right, you too. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.